Okay.
Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something great. Go make a legacy, manifest destiny. Back in the days, we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day, we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars, but I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, something for oddities, stranger crusades. They never wanna be the winning the novelties. Don't ever change, we wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on their rise, stay up on their rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on their rise, stay up on their rise, never come down. Mama said, don't give up. It's a
The world keeps changing. So my mission is turning challenges into opportunities. I'm opting in, signing up, and using my voice. Today, I recommit to my shine for myself, for my community, for our health. There is strength in possibility, and new opportunities are coming. With the American Heart Association by my side, I'm ready to thrive because we live fierce.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I was diagnosed with high blood pressure 12 years ago. I had 6 mini strokes in the hospital, and I had a severe stroke 8 months later. That day was terrible. I passed out, and that's what I remember, passing out. When I woke up, I couldn't speak or walk. I felt trapped inside myself because I could think. I am an attorney and I can't go into the courtroom because I think that most people don't find me intelligent. They tend to finish my sentences. And And that's what I want to do. You have to be an advocate for your health, because if you don't take care of yourself, this is what will happen.
Nearly half of U.S. adults are disproportionately affected by a silent killer robbing us of precious time with our loved ones. This silent killer causes many people unnecessary disease and death, and many don't even know they have it. A healthy blood pressure is below 120/80. The higher a person's blood pressure, the more forcefully blood is pumped through the heart, organs, and arteries, creating devastating consequences. It's often the first step towards strokes, vision loss, heart failure, heart attacks, kidney failure, kidney disease, and sexual dysfunction. At age 50, people without high blood pressure have life expectancy 5 years longer than those with high blood pressure. Even though high blood pressure can't be cured, it can be managed effectively through lifestyle changes like a well-balanced, low-sodium diet, managing stress, maintaining a healthy weight, and medication when needed. And while this may sound simple, there are many factors that can limit a person's ability to manage. Meet John. He was recently diagnosed with high blood pressure. Because his blood pressure wasn't measured accurately before, he's had elevated levels for much longer than he knows. John's doctor recommended that he regularly monitor his blood pressure, but his limited break schedule makes it hard to stay on top of. John lives in a food desert, without consistent access to healthy food that is low in salt, and the local market that has healthier options is much more expensive. John's high insurance copays have made it difficult for him to afford both his medication and healthier groceries, forcing him to choose less nutritious foods. All of these issues combined contribute to John's already high levels of stress. Because of where John lives, the local economy is struggling, affecting the whole area from limited low-wage jobs to underfunded schools. This limits John's ability to afford the means to provide better options for his family. The truth is, John's story is truer for some people than others. Women make up more than half of the high blood pressure deaths, with women of color being disproportionately impacted. Among Hispanic Americans over age 20, 50% of men and 40% of women have high blood pressure. Compared to white Americans, Black Americans are 40% more likely to have high blood pressure, 10% less likely to have their blood pressure under control, and 3 times as likely to die from heart disease caused by high blood pressure. The American Heart Association is committed to equitable health for all by reducing uncontrolled high blood pressure. We're working with partners to improve diagnosis and control in healthcare settings, supporting efforts that provide those in need with home monitoring services, working with community partners to ensure access to pharmacies and nutritious foods, and meeting people where they are to identify high blood pressure and connect them with clinical services. As champions for health equity, the American Heart Association and our volunteers are uniquely positioned to provide the systemic and policy changes needed to improve blood pressure control in high-risk neighborhoods, reducing disparities because everyone deserves the opportunity for a full, healthy life.
(150/90). As a federal law enforcement officer responsible for deterring human smuggling, I felt absolutely bulletproof when the doctors told me to change my diet, go on medication, lower my stress levels, and I didn't listen. You know, just because you feel great doesn't mean that there's not a problem. November 5th, I got off work, went home, and I was playing catch with my oldest son. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't move my left arm. Turned out to be a full-blown major stroke. And then I had my second and third stroke, and followed into brain surgery to repair the damage. Very hard to imagine that I've been termed disabled. I've had to learn to swallow again. My memory is absolutely shot. The foot, I have no movement. 0. That's, head to toe. Everything's changed. If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation. I was 40 years old.
130. Just another number, right? Think again. It can mean all sorts of bad things. Swimming is great, but swimming with 130 sharks is a bad idea. 130 is too much of a lot of things, and it's too high for blood pressure. A blood pressure reading of 130 over 80 or higher means you're more likely to have a stroke or heart attack. Visit heart.org/HBP to find out more about controlling your blood pressure.
Okay, let's have a real talk about blood pressure. Do you monitor yours regularly? It's something everyone with high blood pressure should do, but it's something most people don't know how to do correctly. Checking your blood pressure regularly will help let you know if you have it under control. It will also help you start to understand which factors are putting you at high risk for stroke and heart attack. Before I get to that though, I just want to stress one thing. If you have high blood pressure, you should talk to your doctor to figure out how frequently you should be checking it at home. For most people, taking your blood pressure twice in the morning and twice in the evening, even just for a week, will help you and your doctor get a better understanding of your blood pressure. For morning readings, it's best to take those before you take your blood pressure medication. It's also very important to avoid exercise, caffeine, or tobacco at least 30 minutes prior to testing, since those can affect your levels. Now, let's move on to talk about the proper way to measure your blood pressure at home. Nearly half adults in the U.S. have high blood pressure and are at high risk for stroke and heart attack. So self-measuring is one of the easiest ways to be proactive about our health. Here I have my blood pressure monitoring device. It's easy to use and it helps me get an accurate reading. Be sure to get an automated device with the upper arm cuff. That's the type doctors recommend. The first thing you want to do is find a quiet place to sit where your back is in an upright, stable position. A dining room chair is great. You want to make sure the chair isn't too soft so your body is fully supported. Sit with your feet flat on the floor and don't cross your legs or ankles. If you need to use the bathroom, make sure you go before you do your reading. Next, rest your arm on a flat surface with your palm facing up. Place the blood pressure cuff on your bare upper arm just above your elbow. Your arm should be relaxed and resting so the cuff is at the same height as your heart. Now rest quietly for 5 minutes before taking the first measurement. Avoid talking while taking your blood pressure measurement. Once your first measurement is completed, write down the blood pressure numbers and pulse that are displayed on the device. Wait 1 minute and then repeat this process again. As you just saw, it's important to check your two measurements at around the same time each morning and evening. At your next doctor's visit, be sure to share your blood pressure numbers so you can discuss the numbers and so your care plan can be changed if necessary. That's it. Not bad, right? Measuring your blood pressure at home is easy to do and a great way to stay on top of your health. If you have more questions about managing or measuring your blood pressure overall, visit the website.
Welcome back, everyone. You can tell it's live because you hear the ambulance outside trying to get by, the fire truck. I trust everybody enjoyed the breakout sessions, which again today were fantastic. I was able to toggle between them, hearing great clinical updates as well as community updates. I learned about the 5 W's for determining social determinants. So really great, and kudos to everybody who spoke today. As we round out the second day, this is a perfect way to round out. First, the video that we just saw reminding us how to accurately check blood pressure is such a jump on top of Dr. Shimbo's presentation from yesterday, and really brings the whole summit together. Now, our next speaker for the plenary at this time really doesn't need an introduction. He's been involved in the American Heart Association leadership and really has a national reputation. It's Dr. Eduardo Sanchez, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Prevention at the American Heart Association. And he's going to give us an update on the activities of the Heart Association and kind of bring everything together from our conference. So Dr. Sanchez.
Good morning, everybody. This is also real life. There were sirens a moment ago, I promise you there's going to be dog barking fairly soon, and I may actually have to step away for a second, and I apologize in advance. I am so pleased to be with y'all. Wish I could be in New York City, one of my favorite cities in the entire world. I have had a chance to look at the agenda, and oh my gosh, what a great couple of days of content. Next slide. My new favorite metaphor is about things being a team sport, and blood pressure control is a team sport, starting with team-based care, but really extending to the work that we need to be doing in clinical care settings and in our communities. And it's a long game. And COVID-19 is the reminder that we need to keep our eye on the long haul prize, because we've all experienced a temporary setback as a result of COVID. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate y'all for putting on this hypertension summit. Second, for those awardees, Target BP awardees that are going to be recognized a little bit later on. Let me just say now, congratulations. Thank you for all you do every single day to make a difference in people's lives, to help others of us make a difference in people's lives, and for participating in this summit. It's a team sport. I just did some bullet points on some things that I think characterize that team sport aspect. The American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association, and a long list that just wouldn't allow on this page. Lots of organizations participated in developing the 2017 hypertension guideline. I had the great honor and privilege of being on the advisory committee for Take the Pressure Off New York City, what is characterized as the first citywide high blood pressure initiative in 2018. And I'm pleased to see that the work continues to get blood pressure under control. There was a thing called a pandemic in 2020, again, a reminder of how important it is for us to do teamwork. And I listed just a handful of folks who I know personally who are part of or have been part of the agenda, who I get the privilege of working with and calling colleagues and friends. Dr. Egan Shimbo Masamasakoi, who's part of the National Hypertension Control Initiative team at the American Heart Association, Jide Williams, and Carlos Rodriguez, my Dominican brother from another mother. Next slide. I am so pleased to work for the American Heart Association that realized as a result of COVID-19 that we might need to rethink our 2030 goal. Our 2030 goal had been about extending long, healthier lives. And I think we realized early on that the pandemic might really make that a bit of a challenge. And I may talk about that a little bit. But what I want to focus on is our mission is to be a relentless force for longer, healthier lives. And so in addition to hypertension control, the American Heart Association has been involved in food insecurity issues and COVID issues and heart failure issues, a broad array, again, in the spirit of team sports. Sometimes we don't lead, sometimes we're just part of that team. And we've made a very, very strong commitment to be champions for health equity and assuring that we address social determinants of health, structural racism, and always keep in mind that rural areas have distinct challenges from urban areas of our country. Next slide. So here it is, COVID-19, what did it do? Well, I'm gonna try to be quick. Y'all can look at some of these numbers. What's not here, I will talk about a little bit. First of all, COVID-19 occupied the #3 spot for causes of death in the United States last year, approximately 350,000 deaths. And some would say, well, you got to die of something. And the truth is that COVID-19 killed and then actually resulted in increased deaths in virtually every single other category. So COVID-19 by itself increased, there was increased mortality in this country, 350,000 deaths, plus all the increases in all the other categories. It left a wake of destruction and is still leaving a wake of destruction behind it. Next slide. Even deaths from hypertension increased. And almost, well, a 14% increase in crude mortality rate and a 12% increase in adjusted mortality rate from 2019 to 2020. Next slide. As you know, and one thing that's not here that I do want to share is that this the wake of destruction that COVID-19 left is that life, and maybe I have it in the next slide, but life expectancy in this country went down. And in the three major race ethnicity groups, for white Americans, life expectancy went down 1.2 years from 2019 to 2020. For African American persons in this country, life expectancy went down 2.9 years. And for Latino Hispanics, life expectancy came down 3 years. And the quote unquote, sometimes referred to Hispanic paradox was very, very much diminished as a result of COVID-19. Let's get back to hypertension for a moment. Here's some numbers. I just wanted to have a sense. Looking at 140 over 90 as opposed to 130 over 80, what's the prevalence of hypertension? Of course, it's going to be much higher if we look at 130 over 80, but comparing 140 over 90, these are data that are easily accessible. Nationally, about 31%. In New York State, about 30%. In New York City, about 34%. That probably has a lot to do with the race ethnicity makeup of the city compared to the state and compared to the country. Next slide. I did want to show this slide because, and actually, why don't we go to the next slide, because I think I have a graphic. Yep. And so here's a graphic that shows blood pressure control in what some of y'all call federally qualified health centers. I came up in an FQHC. That's how I know them, but we have been asked to refer to them as HRSA-sponsored health centers these days, so we do. And what you can see is that that there is a incremental increase in blood pressure control from 2016 to 2019 and a dramatic drop off in 2020. I think that's the experience that many of us have had. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit. I wanted to have this cover page slide because I'm going to talk a little bit about some interesting insights that came from this work done by Dr. Muntner et al. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about some of the things that are here. One is that these are NHANES-based data. Blood pressure control among adults overall is about 46%. I said there would be dogs, and there they are. But I think the dramatic blood pressure control variance I highlighted in red. And you can see that for non-Hispanic Black persons, non-Hispanic Asian persons, and Hispanic persons, at least based on these NHANES data, the blood pressure control levels are, I would say, markedly lower than those of non-Hispanic white persons, hovering around 41%, as opposed to hovering at 48% for non-Hispanic whites. Next slide. Now, when we look at some social determinants of health factors or social needs factors, things that I'm sure y'all talked about today come to light. Less education equals less blood pressure control. Less income equals less blood pressure control. Not having insurance, way less blood pressure control, and not having had healthcare in the past 12 months dramatically reduces blood pressure control. And it's the reminder to the American Heart Association, a national organization, that as we look at some regional differences, the things that happen in states where people are highly uninsured, like the state of Texas, where I live and where I'm talking to you from, the challenge, the biggest challenge to address may be getting people insurance. Next slide, please. You know, and the reminder of this is a team sport. This is a team sport that crosses domains and crosses sectors. And what I wanted to do for the next little while is talk a little bit about a variety of things that are placed in these sectors. Next slide. So we were pleased, I hope all of y'all were, the announcement that came from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services last week on voluntary sodium reduction goals that are going to try to reduce the sodium that's in processed, packaged, and prepared foods. You know as well as I do, this is the sort of thing that could result in a movement of the bell curve related to blood pressure control, and then also related to, on a population level, the adverse effects of hypertension. Next slide. I am a big fan of the community guide, and I wanted to highlight and those are bolded, some findings or some of their recommendations around cardiovascular disease, team-based care to improve blood pressure control, strong evidence. Interventions that engage community health workers, strong evidence. Making it less expensive, if no cost at all, for cardiovascular disease preventive services, and I would include in there treatment services, recommended, strong evidence. Tailored pharmacy-based interventions to improve medication adherence, strong evidence. And lastly, self-measured blood pressure when combined with additional report recommended with strong evidence. These are the things that we can some do in our clinical care settings, but maybe more importantly, figure out how we can embed and build this capacity in our communities to support blood pressure control for folks in the general population in our communities. Next slide. Y'all know this work. This is the Ron Victor work, but it's the reminder. This is one where community and clinical training come together. The intervention was barbers that encourage meetings in barbershops with specialty trained pharmacists who could prescribe drug therapy, make changes under collaborative practice agreements with physicians and other providers. And the results were a reduction in systolic blood pressure, 63% of participants achieving blood pressure below 130/80, and a 95% cohort retention rate. And this not only informs what could be done in barbershops, but I think this is good data, begin to figure out how do we embed capacity in communities to achieve better blood pressure control. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the National Hypertension Control Initiative that the American Heart Association is involved with in a cooperative agreement with the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health and the Health Resources and Services Administration, where we are being tasked to provide training and technical assistance in 350 HRSA-sponsored health centers, sometimes called FQHCs, to do a few things. One of them is to use the MAP framework to improve blood pressure control with an added focus and added opportunity to provide self-measured blood pressure devices to 50+% of the patients in those 350 health centers. You know the MAP framework, and we are doing our part to build the capacity, build the competency, build the confidence around accurate measurement, doing it right and using the right equipment, validated devices, acting rapidly when that person's blood pressure is not controlled, acting very quickly to intensify care, and then confirming that that action resulted in a blood pressure reduction within 4 weeks, and then partnering with patients, making them a part of the treatment team. They are part of that team that requires teamwork. Next slide. Target BP, which is something that we are going to be recognizing those who have achieved in New York City in just a little while, had, like everyone else, a little bit of a bump in the road. Despite the fact that we had a high number of healthcare organizations that participated compared to prior years, those that submitted data, and more importantly, those that achieved gold and gold plus levels was reduced from the year before. We're not surprised at all. We're not surprised at all. We see this as what's happened as a result of COVID-19. And we believe strongly, and I believe strongly, that we can double down and get back to where we were, and then begin our slow but steady incrementation upwards of blood pressure control. Next slide. I talked a little bit about this. Here's some of the details. $32 million came to the American Heart Association to do the training and technical assistance that I talked about. The program also involves engaging community-based organizations. And as I said, Masa Masakoi was part of one of the community tracks, I believe yesterday, might have been today. And what I didn't say was that there was $60 million in funding to those 350 health centers that I mentioned for SMBP plus other technology to be used. So they are procuring and distributing the SMBP devices, and another 146 received $30 million in funding, but we don't have a training and technical assistance relationship with them. Next slide. We've organized our work. I sort of have alluded to this. We have very much tried to do our work and think about our work in the spirit of person-centeredness, realizing that clinical care has to be of the highest quality, adherent to guidelines, adherent to the science, but that the community is the place where that clinical care happens. It's the place where people live their lives, and we want to make sure that there is the kind of interconnectedness that gets us there, up to and including a focus on assessing and addressing social needs in the clinical care setting, and then making sure, to the extent that we can, working with community-based organizations, that partners can address those issues. Leadership and evaluation are critically important to get this work done, and all of it on the foundation of health equity and a focus on health equity. Next slide, please. We've organized our work to, again, provide training and technical assistance. We've done it in this modular frame where we do national webinars, workshops that are associated to those webinars. They're a little bit more real, not so much real time because the webinars are real time, but they are more workshoppy, as they are called, where it is about kind of hands-on, how do you get it done, as opposed to what is it. Office hours reinforce that content, and then we provide one-to-one technical assistance as needed. The next slide is going to show you the modular categories. I'm not going to go in those in detail, except to say that there is a focus on measuring accurately. There is a focus on SMBP. There is a focus on acting rapidly. And we are in the midst of our partnering with patients sessions this month on lifestyle modification and next month on social determinants of health. Next slide, please. And this has become my favorite quote, and even more so in the aftermath or in the midst of COVID-19. I don't know if y'all know who Hans Rosling was, but he was described as celebrity statistician. He co-founded something called Gap Finder. You should go look online at the work that he did. It's really interesting. But a quote that I love of his is, "I'm not an optimist. I'm a very serious possibilist." And as I reflect on what I saw on the agenda that was shared with y'all over the last 2 days, and I think about the capacity that we have to get things done, it is possible to do the work to improve blood pressure control in this country. And in the name of improving blood pressure control, get to that place where we reduce the strokes that disable people, the heart attacks that need to be tended to, the heart failure that shorten people's lives. Because at the end of the day, AHA, and all our partners, everyone else on the team, can only realize that relentless drive to be a relentless force to for longer, healthier lives. We can only achieve that by doing the things that are going to make a difference. We believe blood pressure control is one of those public health, clinical care issues that we can and need to address quickly and firmly so that we can extend lives. So I thank you very much. I think that was the last slide. If there's time for questions, I'll take them. And if not, we'll continue. So I'm going to take a deep breath, and I think we'll continue on. As I said, this work is work of partners and is work that takes a lot of us. So as New York City advances on its mission to improve blood pressure control rates of patients with hypertension, we want to take a moment to recognize clinical partners who have achieved national benchmarks in patient outcomes and in clinical care. We'd like to spotlight one particular collaborator of the AHA's that has achieved the new recognition level of Gold Plus this year. So here to discuss more about their efforts on hypertension management, I'd like to welcome Moshe Blackstein, administrator of the Beth Abraham Center, which is part of Centers Healthcare. Moshe?
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanchez, for that introduction. I think we've learned a lot from Dr. Sanchez over these past few minutes about the value of blood pressure management and its implementation. We went through a tremendous amount of modules and best practices, and today I want to talk about a couple things. Number one will be a little bit about who we are and what we do, and the second is how we've incorporated some of these modules into our best practices, and as Dr. Sanchez mentioned, achieved the Gold Plus standard. So we'll start off just by introducing myself again. As Dr. Sanchez mentioned, my name is Moshe Blackstein. I am the administrator at Beth Abraham Center, which is a 448 skilled nursing facility in the Bronx, 448 beds. So we have a large population in the downstate region. And as you'll see on the next slide, there are several areas that we touch. A lot of lives that we've impacted. We have a couple in the southern New Jersey region, a few facilities in Providence, Rhode Island, a few in Kansas, and the majority of our platform expands throughout upstate and downstate New York. Next slide. Along with our skilled nursing facility portfolio, there's a lot of ancillary companies that we touch. As a brand, our Centers Healthcare umbrella incorporates pretty much everything on the post-acute continuum. We happen to be the largest post-acute continuum on the East Coast. And as you can see from some of the affiliated companies that we have, we range anywhere from laboratories to home care agencies, dialysis centers, telemedicine, transportation companies, and the like. Next slide. This just gives you a brief summary of what we do on an annual basis. We're touching approximately 600,000 lives a year. Again, most of this is in the New York area, downstate and upstate, but in some affiliated states as well. We're talking about a tremendous amount of lives that we're able to impact. When we started collaborating with the American Heart Association a couple of years ago, we realized, based on some of their research and feedback, the value of blood pressure management. And when we sat back and talked about it as a team, we also realized, as you can see on the slide, how many people we can affect or impact positively. And so that pushed us to move forward with some of the initiatives that they gratefully shared with us. For us, as a skilled nursing facility, the most important piece, or the most important drive for what we do on a daily basis, is to deliver quality care. Right? It's a very generic statement. I think everybody would say that that's their goal. But we have to come to work every day trying to figure out what we can do differently today to deliver that quality care. Best practices nowadays in healthcare is tremendously important to avoid unnecessary hospitalizations, but to also make sure that at the end of the day, our patients are being well cared for. As Dr. Sanchez mentioned in his presentation, cardiac disease, specifically blood pressure management, is something that affects so many people throughout the world. On a more of a personal level, I can relate to it. In my family, we have a tremendous amount of cardiac disease history, things of that nature. More recently, a family member of mine had a bypass surgery, and that individual in the family had no idea what was going on the inside. He was in no pain, happened to have went for a regular checkup, passed several tests, had an angioplasty done, and then found out that that quadruple bypass was needed immediately. But the point is, as Dr. Sanchez mentioned, is that it is a silent killer. And it causes so many related problems that if it's not managed properly, will inevitably affect one's life. So when the American Heart Association did share with us some of those best practices and modules, we went back to our drawing board and tried to figure out how we can impact our community in a way that makes things better. So one of the most magnificent things that I think we found as a facility is that there is tremendous profoundness in simplicity. A lot of the modules are very simple, right? It is important to maintain or to get or to achieve an accurate blood pressure reading, right? Nowadays, when our healthcare workers are tasked with so many different things, right? Naturally, people might be in a rush to do various things. The positioning of how blood pressure is taken, right? The positioning of the patient that is taking or having blood pressure taken, making sure the patient is comfortable, making sure that we're practicing good techniques, making sure that it's being done patiently and not rushed. All those different things affect the reading, the outcome. And the lifestyle that Dr. Sanchez mentioned also is something that we take to heart, right? To make sure that we're maintaining the stress of these patients, or limiting the stress of these patients, medication administration, sodium intake, making sure that their lifestyle is one that helps them reduce their elevated blood pressures. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how we've achieved, along with the American Heart Association, this Gold Plus standard. So our facility, I'm proud to announce, we exceeded the benchmark for the control rate of 70% for the hypertensive patients by implementing numerous evidence-based practices along with the AHA. For starters, how often blood pressure is taken, right? Blood pressure should be taken every 2 to 4 weeks with handheld devices and every 6 months with wall-mounted devices, making sure that our readings are accurate across the board. Also making sure that our devices are ambulatory blood pressure monitors, that they're calibrated at regular intervals, calibrated properly. Again, without the proper reading, we cannot treat our patients in a way that is beneficial for them. We also find it very interesting when you think about the workforce in general across our continuum that there's a lot of turnover naturally in the industry, and it is our responsibility as healthcare workers to ensure that whatever training and education is being done is a constant. Right, as people come and go, we need to make sure that our competencies are where they need to be. And so, as simple as that sounds, is something that we maintain and is something that I recommend everybody maintain: continuous education on how to measure blood pressure properly. We also routinely check on our staff's competencies. So, besides educating them, we will, at a moment's notice, walk on the floors and monitor them taking blood pressure, making sure that they're taking it properly, making sure their techniques are appropriate, and then obviously providing more support and education where that is necessary. One of the recommendations that the AHA had for us, which I think is so vital and valuable, is that wherever the blood pressure is being taken on the floor, we try to make sure that it's being taken in one area on each floor. We have 12 resident floors, that it's being taken near an infographic, that the AHA has designed a beautiful infographic for us that superimposes, if you will, the positioning and technique of how to take blood pressure. And so a nurse that might be new, a nurse that might be unfamiliar, or possibly someone who's in a rush can look at that infographic and use it as sort of a sounding board to make sure that their practice is being done properly or is best. And what we find is that the comprehensive approach that we've taken at our facility is directly impacts the blood pressure control rates. There's no question that because of it, we've earned this Gold Plus status with the American Heart Association. And in our future endeavors together with them is to really advance the health quality of our patients and improve the health outcomes of all New Yorkers. You've seen throughout this whole symposium how important this is, and a lot of people wake up when it's too late. I think it's a very important. I think it's a very important obligation for us as healthcare workers and providers to educate all our clients, to educate all our residents, to educate the community at large about how important this is, how preventative measures can impact the future of your life and your family. And so I appreciate the time that I had to present to you guys, and very much appreciate the collaboration we have with Dr. Sanchez and his team over at the American Heart Association, and look forward to being able to impact the lives of many New Yorkers and others throughout the world. So thank you for listening.
Moshe, thank you so very much for not only your efforts, but for sharing real world experiences. I spend my time in an office reading things and looking at things online. You're living it. You're the reminder again that this is a team sport, and it's teams of teams. And again, congratulations for that Gold Plus recognition. But more important than the recognition, I hope, is the difference you're making in people's lives in all the places where Centers Health is doing its work. So thank you very, very much. We now want to acknowledge all of our clinical sites who have been recognized by the Target BP program this past year. You're going to see 3 slides, 1 slide for each of the 3 levels in our market. Silver first. And you're going to have to read real fast, but these slides are available. And again, no slight meant. We want to acknowledge the work that's been done in this really, really challenging year. Next slide has gold recognition status. And the final slide has Gold Plus recognition status awardees. In the name of recognition, I want to acknowledge all the work that was done by AHA staff, AHA volunteers, and others of you to make this happen. A nice, hugely successful event. And the last thing I want to say is that the past 2 days have been, I think, a really nice representation of how science gets translated to resources and guidelines that then gets further translated into action. And until that science gets all the way to the action, it's nothing more than interesting reading. When it gets to action, it starts making a difference in people's lives. So I want to thank those of you who do the science, then those who prepare the resources, and so importantly, those of you who translate, are able to translate that into action. I think Moshe did a really nice job of describing how that happens. And last thing I'll do is, I said that high blood pressure control is a team sport. I'm not going to do a cheer, despite the fact that I'm in Texas, and God, there must be more cheerleaders in this state than there are football players. But let me just say, go team, go New York City. Let's meet next year and say we've made some progress towards the backslide that COVID-19 caused. So the last person that I want to thank and recognize and hand this off to is this year's event chair, Dr. Larry Phillips. Larry, thank you so much for the work that you've done to pull this off. Thank you. And back to you.
Thank you, Eduardo. And thank you to you and Moshe for speaking today and really giving us an update. It was a great combination. We got to see site-specific expertise and an overview of the entire program and where we're seeing such tremendous success. As we look back at the last 2 days, it's really been remarkable. And I hope that the goal from our planning committee was that everyone would learn something. If you're on the community-based side, that you were learning what other people were doing and what's happening in advance to the clinical side. If you're in the clinical side, that you're advancing your knowledge, but also getting to see what's out there and learning how we interdigitate all the experiences that we're having to have a comprehensive approach to hypertensive diagnosis and management. As a wrap up, a couple of things I want to make sure to do. First, I want to thank all our speakers. It's been tremendous work by all of you to put together such a powerful program. And this program just won't be live. It also the ability for people to watch afterwards, and we'll be able to track the impact that we're having there. In the follow-up, everybody is going to receive a survey to share your feedback. Although this is the first, we hope it's not the last. And we think that by continuing the pressure, pun intended, we're going to be able to actually have a tremendous impact in a continuous nature. I want to again thank our event sponsors. We couldn't have done this without the support of our presenting sponsor, Centers Healthcare, and our advocate level sponsor, Columbia University Irving Medical Center. I want to thank again our planning committee, again, representation through the entire spectrum, and for all of your input, many of whom were speakers for the last 2 days, and really appreciate the time that people put in of their busy schedules to join this initiative. And finally, I want to thank the AHA staff, really who took the lion's share of the work in putting all this together. A couple of people to thank include Jamie Racanelli, Tara Klashevsky, Meg Gilmartin, Diego Ortiz, Mark Hurley, and many other folks who are on the call helping with the breakouts, a lot of behind the scenes work. But speaking of behind the scenes, I have a special thank you to Laura Shelton, who I like to think is the magician that was keeping things going, either prepping everybody to make sure there was a good flow. And this event has gone technologically without a hitch. It's really amazing. And the final thank you is to Robin Vitale, who's the Vice President of Health for New York City, but really is the glue that made this program work. From the very beginning when she and I spoke months ago about what it would look like, to really the brute force to make it happen and make it so successful. And it really is, any success that we have today is a tribute to her and her hard work. Well, with that, we're going to close the summit. We hope that everybody learned something new, that we all learned something that we can take back to our worlds outside of today, that our interest was really spiked up a bit, that we talked about increasing the attention that we spend, increasing the ideas, really trying to figure out a way to use today as a spark. That was the word that was used by the commissioner yesterday, a spark. And we've tried to build the curriculum in a way that's going to spark you to do more, to do better, and to really be successful. So thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and look forward to hearing your feedback.
Clock strikes upon the hour and the sun begins to fade. Still enough time to figure out how to chase my blues away. I'm gonna ride up till now. It's the light of day that shows me how. And when the night falls
been in love and lost my senses, spinning through the town. Sooner or later, the fever ends, and I wind up feeling down. I need a man who'll take a chance on a love that burns hot enough to last. So when the night falls, my lonely heart calls. Oh, I wanna dance with somebody. I wanna feel the heat with somebody. Yeah, I wanna dance with somebody who loves me. Oh, I wanna dance with somebody. I wanna feel the heat. Yeah, I wanna dance with somebody who loves me. Somebody who loves me. Somebody who to hold me in his arms. Oh, I need a man to take a chance on a love that burns hot enough to last. So when the night falls, my lonely heart calls. Oh, I wanna dance with somebody. I wanna feel the heat with somebody. Yeah, I wanna dance with somebody who loves me. Oh, I wanna dance with somebody. I wanna feel the heat with somebody. Yeah, I wanna dance with somebody who loves me. Come on, baby. Yeah. Now get with this. Whoa, don't you wanna dance with me, baby? Don't you wanna dance with me, boy? Hey, don't you wanna dance with me, baby? With somebody who loves me. Don't you wanna dance? Say you wanna dance. Don't you wanna dance? Don't you wanna dance? Say you wanna dance. Don't you wanna dance? Don't you wanna dance? Say you wanna dance. With somebody who loves me.
I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. Tonight's the night. Let's live it up. I got my money. Let's spin it up. Go out and smash it. Like, oh my God. Jump out that sofa. Let's kick it off.
I know that we'll have a ball if we get down and go
shut it down. Let's burn the roof. And then we'll do it again. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, and do it, and do it. Let's live it up and do it, and do it, and do it, do it, do it. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. Cause I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling tonight's the night. Hey, let's live it up. Let's live it up. I got my money. Hey, let's spin it up. Let's spin it up. Go out and smash it. Smash it. Like oh my god. Like oh my god. Jump out that sofa. Come on. Let's get off. Fill up my cup. Drink. Mazel tov. Look at her dance. Move it, move it. Just take it off. Let's paint the town. Paint the town. We'll shut it down. Shut it down. Let's burn the roof. And then we'll do it again. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, and do it, and do it. Let's live it up and do it, and do it, and do it, do it, do it. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, do it, do it, do it. Here we come, here we go. We gotta rock, 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 rock. Easy come, easy go. Now we on top, 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 top. Feel the shot, body rock, rock it, don't stop, round and round, up and down. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Saturday to Sunday. Get with us. You know what we say, party every day, party every day, and I'm feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. 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 That tonight's gonna be a good night.